Introduction. Time to pull out the big guns. I will tread on some sacred ground here, but as the old saying goes, no risk, no reward. I know many storytellers have gone to similar places, but here's my take on the universe, free will, and the mysteries surrounding us all. As I said, it is sacred ground. However, it is fertile soil to shape and twist our reality into forms that resemble our world, but move into unknown territory when we least expect it. Reality is that part of the imagination we all agree on. Unknown. What's on the menu? The headlights emanating from Ben's SUV struck the fog and died there. Ben could see perhaps 50 yards in front of him, but no more. He had been driving for almost 2 hours in these miserable conditions and needed a break. He was tired and his eyes hurt from the continued strain. He should have stayed in the beach house in the first place, but business was business, and the meeting was urgent if his company was going to seal the deal on their latest potential property. Ben's company wanted to build an upscale office park in Alameda, which was near enough to San Francisco to be desirable, but not so far as to be inexpensive. It was what his boss called a Goldilocks property. Ben had been on vacation with his family when the meeting got scheduled, but what could he do? Life didn't just stop because he and his family were on vacation. Ben knew he would get an earful when he returned to the beach house. He had promised Anna that he would be gone no more than an hour, and she had grudgingly agreed. He neglected to emphasize the fact that he would need to drive 2.5 hours each way to make the meeting, so basically the day was shot. Add to that fact the meeting lasted 3 hours, and now this blasted fog had rolled in from nowhere. He knew his return to the house would be as unpleasant as the weather surrounding him. Am I lost? Ben thought. No, he had not diverted from the route provided by the car's GPS, and this had him headed straight for the coast, though nothing looked familiar. Of course, he couldn't see much thanks to good old Mr. Fog out there, but he was worried nonetheless. Suddenly, cutting through the fog like a laser was a bright red and yellow sign on his right. It seemed to simply burn the fog away. The sign read, Gino's Diner. Ben considered. What the hell? He said. I could use a break, grab a cup of coffee and something to eat. Besides, fog might lift if I give it some time. It's going to make me even later, but I can call Anna from the diner and explain. Ben pulled into the parking lot and got out of the car. At the last minute, he remembered to grab his cell phone to call Anna, but he wasn't getting any reception. Not one freaking bar, he exclaimed. Figures. Ben entered the restaurant and was greeted with a barren expanse. There was no one in the place. It looked clean and well lit, just empty. A dozen thin, shiny stools with red vinyl covers were poised in front of the counter. The floor consisted of alternating black and white tiles. The booths and tables completed the decor. Every aspect was something out of a 1950s diner. Ben recalled sitting with his father to watch American Graffiti as a teenager. This place would have fit right into that film. Ben picked a place at the counter and sat down. Within a few seconds, the kitchen doors swung open, revealing a man of perhaps 60, dressed in the customary white smock and apron. He had dark curly hair and the beginnings of a paunch underneath his apron. He wore a thick mustache and had eyebrows to match. Right out of Central Casting, Ben thought. If God was going to design a guy named Gino, and Ben assumed this guy was indeed the Gino identified by the neon sign, this was what he would look like. Good evening, my friend. Nice of you to stop in. We're gonna get you. Kinda dead around here, Ben replied. Yeah, we have our ups and downs, but we make do. So what'll it be? Got a menu? Sure, but we serve just about anything. Tell me what you're in the mood for, and I'll bet you we got it. And I'll bet it's the best dish you've ever had. Pretty confident about that, huh? Said Ben. The man nodded. Well, if this place is so good, why no customers? Ben spread his hands out wide, gesturing to the empty restaurant. Like I said, traffic comes and goes. Trust me, the food is the least of your issues. He returned Ben's gesture, pointing to the fog outside that had somehow gotten worse in the last few minutes. The fog is bad this evening. Hope you don't have any place you need to be right away. In fact, I do, but driving in this shit was near impossible and your sign just appeared, like out of nowhere, so I figured a little food and coffee would do me good. Well, let me pour you a cup of joe. The man pulled a pot off the burner and poured Ben a cup. Ben took a sip. Damn, that is good. If your food is as good as the coffee, then I guess I won't take your bet. By the way, you wouldn't happen to have a landline here. I need to call my wife and the cell reception here is for shit. Nope, sorry. No landline and the cell reception is pretty much non-existent here. Apologies about that. But since the fog is so bad and you're here, have something to eat. We'll see if the weather clears up. Okay, Ben agreed. Might as well have something to eat. Any recommendations since you seem to be short on menus? Oh, I got a menu, but don't worry about that. I'll show it to you later. But seriously, everything here is good. You just name it. Okay, give me some chicken parmesan, Ben said. He figured with a name like Gino, an Italian dish seemed only appropriate. You got it, my man. I'll go back and place the order. Be right back. He ducked through the doors into what Ben presumed was the kitchen and returned a minute later. Your food will be up shortly. By the way, the name's Gino, like it says on the sign. What's yours? I kind of figured you were Gino, said Ben. Gino smiled in return. My name is Ben. Ben Stairs. A pleasure, Ben. So what's your deal, Ben? Where you headed? I was headed home when this godforsaken fog set in. Gino just stared at Ben. When I asked where you were headed, I didn't just mean tonight, Gino said, a wry smile crossing his face but slightly hidden beneath the bushy mustache. Ben stared back at Gino, unsure what to make of that statement. Come again? I think you heard me clear enough. He held up a finger. But hold that thought for a moment. I smell chicken parmesan, and it smells good to me. Be right back. With that, he once again slid into the kitchen. He popped back out within seconds, carrying a steaming plate. Ben took in the smell. Wow, he thought. Gino was right. It smelled delicious. Distracted by the food, Ben almost forgot Gino's perplexing comment. He dug into his food and tried to forget everything else. Ben gobbled down a few bites and looked up. Gino was smiling down at him. Told you, he said. Is that the best chicken parm you ever had, or what? Ben took the napkin from the counter and wiped some tomato sauce from his chin. You weren't kidding. Compliments to the chef. Would you like to tell him in person? Gino said, pointing to the double doors that led to the kitchen. Come on, he continued. It'll only take a second. I'm sure it will be worth it. Ben considered the offer. This was getting a tad weird, but what the hell? A quick thank you to the chef, what could be the harm? Ben got up slowly, walked around the counter, and followed Gino to the kitchen doors. Gino made an exaggerated gesture that signaled Ben to go first. Slowly, Ben pushed open the doors and peered into the next room. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust and a second or two longer for his brain to make sense of what he was seeing. Or, to be more specific, what he wasn't seeing. There was no kitchen behind the doors. There was nothing behind the doors. Ben started to pull back. In front of him was nothing but a gray expanse. There was just nothing there. It was not the gray of the fog outside. No, it was more profound than that. His stomach dropped because deep in the back of his brain, he sensed that he was looking at an eternity of nothingness. He pulled all the way back into the diner and stumbled back around the counter to his chair. He looked around. Everything appeared normal. The chair, the counter, the fucking diner appeared normal. It was all there. Gino had followed him back into the diner. Take a deep breath there, Ben. Just breathe. You'll be fine in a minute. What the fuck was that? He said finally. What the hell was I seeing? Change that. What was I not seeing? Why was there nothing there? Where the fuck is your kitchen? Where's the rest of the diner? What the hell is going on here? Easy there, Ben. You gotta blow a gasket. Like I said, just breathe. Ben did as Gino suggested. He tried to calm himself. He took in some deep breaths. Then, absently, he started to eat the chicken parmesan. He wasn't hungry now. He wasn't even thinking about food. But his subconscious mind yearned for normalcy, and eating fit the bill. So, he ate. Okay, I get it. You're a tad freaked out. I understand. But I can explain this if you're willing to listen. Ben nodded. What else could he do? This was beyond anything he could comprehend. Perhaps this was some weird-ass reality TV show and there was some rational explanation here. Gino didn't look like David Copperfield, but maybe this was some kind of crazy magician's trick. He was ready to accept just about any explanation.
Good,
said Gino.
Let's begin with some basics. This diner doesn't really exist in your space-time. It exists someplace entirely different. It resides in what your scientists might call in-dimensional space, although that's just an approximation in this case. I guided you here so we could have a chance to talk.
I have no fucking clue what you just said, but go on, at least nothing is disappearing while you're talking.
I won't bore you with the mathematical details, but suffice it to say, we are having this conversation in a real diner, just not in a dimension you normally perceive.
Ben nodded again, though he was still not entirely sure he understood. So, why am I here? What do you want with me? Are you some kind of alien?
Let me address that last question first. No, I'm not an alien. At least, not in the way you think about these things. Secondly, I guided you here just to talk. Nothing bad will happen to you here, I guarantee that. In fact, you're safer here than on the road out there. Nothing can harm you here. You won't be here too long in any event. After we've had a chance to chat, you can go on your merry way. Sound good?
Fine, I guess, but that doesn't really explain much.
Good, said Gino. While we've been talking, I noticed that you managed to finish the chicken. Care for some dessert?
Ben was beginning to think this guy, or whatever he might be, was absolutely nuts. No, I don't want dessert. Geez, can we just get on with it, whatever it is?
We are getting on with it, Ben. Look at that menu you asked about a while back and see if there's anything you like.
Gino handed Ben a menu. Ben, exasperated, took the menu from Gino and opened it up. At the top were some dessert choices: cheesecake, pecan pie, apple pie, in short, the usual stuff. Fine, I'll take some apple pie. Happy?
Fine, said Gino. I'll get that for you.
He reached below the counter and pulled out an apple pie, presumably from thin air, or so it seemed to Ben. Gino handed him the pie. It even had a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top.
But do me a favor, Gino said. Look down at the rest of the menu.
Ben looked from the apple pie back to the menu. He didn't like how Gino was suddenly pushing the whole menu thing on him, but he slowly opened it back up and looked below the dessert selections. Below the dessert heading was another heading. It simply said, Job, in big, bold letters. Below the heading there were 3 choices: commercial real estate broker, law, photography. Ben looked at the choices a second time. Understanding crept softly into his mind like a gentle breeze. He had been in commercial real estate for about 10 years now, after graduating from college. It paid well, but Ben was basically ambivalent about the whole thing. The hours sucked, and his boss, Bill Davenport, never seemed satisfied. Davenport loved the work, God knew why, and was always looking to the next deal and the deal after that. Below his current job was simply the word law. Ben knew why that was on the list. Working in real estate, Ben was constantly dealing with various legal and contractual matters, and the law and its various intricacies interested him. He had often wondered if he would be better suited for the law, perhaps criminal law, over his present job. The last one, photography, practically jumped off the page. He had not taken a real photo in years. Ben was not counting the bullshit pictures he took on his iPhone. No, he was thinking about the photographs he used to take on his Nikon D3400. That was a camera. Ben remembered how it took him a week to convince Anna to let him buy the thing. It cost a bundle, and they were still struggling financially back then. Eventually, she had relented, and Ben had spent the next several months taking pictures like a madman. But that was years ago. As time passed, the picture-taking hunger waned, and work pressures ate away at his free time. It was also about that time that Anna got pregnant, and spare time for taking pictures just faded away. He had been pretty good though, at least he thought so in retrospect. He'd even sold 1 or 2 images to an online magazine. Ben looked up from the menu. Okay, so obviously you know some stuff about me. Just who the hell are you?
I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you who I am, but in return, you tell me something about those menu choices. Deal?
Ben considered the offer as he ate some of the apple pie. One thing was for sure, wherever he was, the food was the best he had ever tasted. It was a stupid thought to pop into his head at that moment, but he couldn't help himself. Chuckling, he said, Damn, this pie is good. Gino just smiled. Fine, Ben finally said. He didn't think he had too much choice. Okay, so who the heck are you and how do you know so much about me?
Well, that's actually 2 questions, but my answer will cover both,
Gino said, grinning just a bit.
Basically, I am what you refer to as God. I would guess that answers your second question as well. I just know stuff. Comes with the job.
Ben gaped.
Look, this whole thing is way above my pay grade, I get that. But you're not God. I'm pretty darn sure about that. Really? 4 years of college and 10 years in commercial real estate, and you're an expert in theology.
Gino paused for effect.
You have a better theory to explain all this?
Well, no, Ben stammered. Not off the top of my head, but look at you. Nothing personal, but you don't appear very godlike, you know? Said Ben, pointing at Gino. You look so, ethnic, Ben said, trailing off, not sure how to finish the sentence, not even sure he should finish the sentence, and pretty sure he shouldn't have started the sentence in the first place.
Offense taken,
Gino thundered, and his voice rumbled through the diner like a herd of rhinos. Ben recoiled at the noise. He suddenly felt scared. Then Gino smiled.
Just messing with you, kid. In all honesty, I don't have a physical form, and the particular mask you see before you just seemed appropriate, given the surroundings. I can appear with any face or form you like.
With that, his face dissolved into an opaque blank slate, and then that space began to spin like a slot machine, hundreds of faces flashing before Ben's eyes in seconds. It was impossible to focus on any one face as they went by too quickly. Eventually, the spinning slowed and stopped back to Gino's face. Ben sat there, dumbfounded. He had no words, no thoughts, and no way to comprehend what he had just seen. Did he really see that? Perhaps, he thought, this will all disappear if I close my eyes and pretend I'm still in my car. He closed his eyes. He waited. He opened them. No change. Same diner, same mustached owner, same fog outside, same sanity melting away like the vanilla ice cream that sat on his apple pie.
You get the point. I was thinking of doing a George Burns face like in the movie Oh God. It was a little before your time and seemed a tad trite, don't you think?
Who's George Burns? Ben managed to get out.
Exactly,
said Gino. Ben waited. After a time, he said, I guess you're God or something. I don't know what to make of any of this.
Fair enough, said Gino. So I answered your questions satisfactorily?
Yeah, sure, I'm good. But no more spinning faces, okay?
Agreed. So let's return to the whole job question, shall we? You've been working in commercial real estate for a decade. The question on the table is that really what you want to do?
Why don't you tell me? You know everything, replied Ben.
Ben, my boy, it doesn't work like that. You have free will, and you make the choices.
Ben considered Gino's question. His brow furrowed as he thought. He just didn't know. Gino let him think for a few minutes and busied himself with cleaning the dishes from the counter. Gino then looked back at Ben, who was obviously struggling with the question.
Sometimes it helps to talk it over out loud. Let me be a sounding board for you,
Gino said. It's not an easy question to answer, replied Ben. By the way, why do I need to decide this now?
You don't have to decide this minute, but you are at a crucial point in your life, and the decisions you make in the next weeks and months will determine the course of your life. That's why I'm here.
Well, shouldn't you be off running the universe or something? Besides, why me?
You are full of questions, responded Gino. But the short answer is that no one is running the universe, at least not in how you framed the question. As to why you, why not you? Look, the way this whole thing works is that I can engage in a limitless number of these conversations at the same time. I like you, so we're having a little conversation. Got it?
Ben nodded in agreement and then, after a moment, shook his head no. He wasn't sure what he understood. He paused and said, So you're not in charge of the universe? Gino sighed.
This gets a little complicated. You're sure you wouldn't be happy with the old "I am that I am" routine? I mean, I didn't write that line, but it kind of sums things up nicely.
No, Ben said. That doesn't really tell me all that much.
I get you,
said Gino.
Personally, I'm trying not to think about it too much. I'm not that into self-reflection. Whole thing can give you a headache. But I'll do my best to explain. First, regarding me, and I hate to use that pronoun here, but it'll do for now. It might be best to think of me as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. I can see that brow of yours furrowing again, so just hold on for a minute there, Benjamin. I am, in fact, all three at the same time. If you think of me as a noun, then quite simply, I am the universe. I'm the whole gosh darn thing. The universe, heck, the multiverse, and I are one and the same. So, I'm not exactly running it. I am it.
He waited, giving Ben a chance to digest this, which would probably be a lot harder to get down than the chicken parmesan and apple pie.
Think of it this way,
he continued.
There are some 100 trillion cells in the human body. Do you actively control each cell's movements and purpose?
Well, no, said Ben. Wait, I have 100 trillion cells inside me?
Give or take a few million, yeah. These cells work according to the plan of the body supporting life, in this case, your life. You are not actively controlling the work of these individual cells, but each one and the activities they perform make up the Ben Stairs sitting in front of me now. In the same way, all the beings and activity in the universe are me, and it all runs according to a predefined set of rules or laws. I don't control, manage, or run it. I am it. And these laws guiding and governing the universe, like gravity and electromagnetism, are also me. These never-ending processes are the verbs, and I am all of them. I am the process.
Ben interrupted. I'm pretty sure gravity is a noun, not a verb.
First you're an expert in theology, and now you're an English major.
Gino laughed.
Technically speaking, you're right, but I'm referring to all the activities taking place every millisecond based on these laws. And so when an object falls, notice that the word falls is a verb. I am the causal agent behind that activity. I am gravity. I cause the object to fall. Happy?
Ben nodded.
Go on. Deists like to think of me as the master clockmaker, he continued. And they are right in some respects. They believe that I made the universe and set it in motion like that clock on the wall, he said, pointing to the far wall of the diner. Deists theorize that I created the universe and just let that clock tick-tock away. It's not a bad analogy as far as it goes. Generally speaking, I don't meddle in human affairs. I might be a master clockmaker, to overuse their analogy, but I would make a shitty repairman. But here's where the analogy falls short. I am not separate and apart from the clock on the wall, or in this case, the universe. I am the universe, and the process by which it works, simultaneously.
Gino stopped there for a moment to assess Ben's comprehension. He looked like he was trying to figure out Einstein's theory of relativity without the benefit of ever having taken a math class.
I know. I told you it could give you a headache. That's why I try not to think about it.
You said you were a noun, a verb, and an adjective. So what's the adjective? Ben asked.
Good question. But let me turn that back on you. What adjective would you give it?
Incomprehensible, exclaimed Ben.
You're not alone in that assessment. Some have called it mysterious. Some have called it majestic. The adjective is in the eye of the beholder. At any precise moment, your description of the totality of everything might change. But like the sky, it's ever-changing but always perfect.
Ben looked at Gino. Ever-changing and always perfect. Sounds like some silly Facebook post or a Hallmark card. Gino shrugged.
A little over the top for your taste? Too schmaltzy.
Yeah, a touch, Ben replied with a smirk. He was beginning to enjoy this crazy-ass conversation. The thought of conversing with God, however you defined it, still freaked him out. Still, if he considered it a conversation with a guy named Gino, It was easier to swallow, and he supposed that was the whole point.
So, Ben, now that we've delved into the depths of theology and the wonders of the universe, which are the same thing as you now know, let's get back to more earthly matters. Namely, what do you want to do? How do you feel about the menu choices?
I'm not really sure. Are you suggesting I need to switch careers right this second?
Not at all. But your question reveals an underlying decision that your subconscious is apparently already made while we've been discussing the universe and my existence,
said Gino.
What's that? Well, obviously that you want to change careers.
Oh, I guess you're right, Ben said with some dawning enlightenment. I guess I really want to try photography, but I'm not sure I can make a real living at that, at least not nearly the same salary as I make now. I would need to make a slow transition as I save some cash.
Now you're doing it. This isn't like some silly made-for-TV movie. You don't suddenly decide, I'm a photographer, and poof, you're selling $1 million pictures. Takes a plan. Takes hard work. It might not even work out, replied Gino.
Now, hold on there. I'd sure as heck like for it to work out. Can't you do a little magic and make that happen? You know, for a friend? Ben smiled, hoping Gino might be willing to throw a tiny miracle in his direction.
Sorry, old boy. I just don't work that way. It sucks, doesn't it? I get that. Here you are, talking to the cause of all things. And you don't even get a lousy t-shirt for the effort.
Gino smiled, and his mustache turned upwards at the ends, giving his face a slightly mischievous appearance.
Of course, he continued, if it makes you feel any better, you won't remember the specifics of this conversation after you leave here anyway. All you'll remember is coming to some realizations along your drive home.
Ben's face drooped precipitously.
Now don't get all pouty on me, said Gino.
Ben pondered this for a minute and said, I guess that makes sense. If I started telling people I talked to God, they'd put me away. Still, it would be nice to remember something about this. Stuff like this doesn't happen every day.
It might happen more than you think, countered Gino. If you can't recall such a conversation, who's to say this is the first time we've talked?
Ben's mouth hung open. Have we spoken before? Gino made no reply. Instead, he started wiping the counter with the dish towel and humming quietly to himself. This went on for a minute or two. Ben got the message. He wasn't getting an answer to that question. Okay, I get it. You can stop humming. You're not that great.
I'll have you know I am very musical. I've inspired a lot of music and been told I have a lovely voice.
Maybe so, but you can't carry a tune. Ben laughed at his jibe.
And to each his own,
muttered Gino. Why don't you look at the menu again? Gino said, extending the menu in Ben's direction. Do I have to? I've already made the big decision.
Are you sure you made the big decision? There might be another item on that menu for you to consider.
The menu hung there in Gino's hand like an unwanted letter from the IRS or an unexpected call from an ex-girlfriend. But eventually, Ben took it from Gino's outstretched hand. Ben's trepidation stemmed from some idea of what he might see when he opened the menu. He didn't want to look. He was a practiced avoider of hard choices, which is perhaps why he was here in Gino's restaurant in the first place, and he had a sense of what he might find next. Slowly, he opened it up. The menu no longer had any options related to work and career. Instead, the heading in bold simply said, Relationship. Ben tried to force his eyes not to move down the page. He really didn't want to read what the choices were, but it seemed his eyes had a curiosity all their own, and they drifted down below the heading. There he saw the following on the menu page. Anna Stairs, Denise Wilkins, True Love, Jennifer Garner. Ben's mind focused on the list's top two names. He wasn't surprised to see his wife Anna's name at the top of the list. He loved Anna, that was real. But, if the truth be told, he wasn't surprised to see Denise's name either. He had been flirting with Denise off and on for 3 years, and while nothing had ever happened, there was something there. He met Denise after joining a local softball league where each team represented their company. Denise worked for a local law firm called Jasnoff and Bratman, and Ben had met her during the first game he had ever played in the league. Ben had noticed Denise right off. She was playing third base, and in the 5th inning, he had gotten a single and stole second base. He had then moved to third on a sacrifice fly. He stood on third base, and they kept stealing glances at each other. The following 2 batters struck out, so Ben was left stranded at third base for the remainder of the inning. Those strikeouts had given him and Denise plenty of time to exchange sideways glances. It was customary for the teams to grab a beer or two after the game, and that's when Denise struck up a conversation with Ben. "Not much luck scoring today," she had said by way of introduction. She had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and her statement caught Ben off guard. He couldn't do much more than stammer out, "Yeah, no luck at all." "Perhaps your luck will change," she said, giggling at her sophomoric pickup line. Ben laughed as well. From that point on, they kept up the flirtatious banter. Along the way, they got to know each other well enough through occasional calls, texts, and meetups after games. He had to admit, he liked her. He liked her a lot. But there was Anna. He loved her, he told himself. They had a good relationship, and they both loved their daughter, Linda. That love for Linda bound them together like an invisible rope tied around their souls. Slowly, inexorably, Ben's eyes went back to the 3rd item on the list. True love. What was that supposed to mean? "Great menu you have in this place," Ben said sardonically. "Remind me to never come back here."
Don't worry, I don't suspect you'll ever see this place again. Free will can be a bitch sometimes. Sorry about that. What are you gonna do?
Gino paused.
I know that last part may have sounded rhetorical, but really, what are you gonna do?
Okay, but what is Jennifer Garner's name doing on the list? I mean, what do I have to do with a famous actress?
Actually, nothing. I just threw her name on the list for fun. I have a thing for her. One of the universe's best works, if I do say so myself.
He said with a chuckle.
Sorry about that. Couldn't resist. But getting back to the question at hand, what are you going to do?
Ben smiled grudgingly at Gino's little quip. I guess lying to you is out of the question, Ben said with a slight smile.
A lie to me is a lie to yourself. I mean that literally, given that I am all things that therefore includes you. You and I, in a sense, overlap, so you might as well speak the truth as much as you know it.
Ben sighed. This is worse than the career decision by a fucking landslide. I'm guessing you know how I feel about Anna and Denise?
I do, but why don't you verbalize it all the same?
Okay, as you know, I love Anna, but marriage is hard. It takes a toll. I'm not sure there's that much spark left in the fire, if you know what I mean. Gino nodded at Ben. I still love Anna and all, but I wish we didn't argue about stupid shit all the time. I just wish things were easier. Ben lowered his head and looked at the diner floor. Black and white squares lined the floor, and Ben's eyes danced from one tile to the other. Black or white, black or white. Eventually, he said, Denise is special. At least I think she is. How the heck do I make a choice in such a weird situation, eating in the diner from nowhere with God watching every move I make?
I'd be watching regardless. Remember, you and I overlap. Think of it like a Venn diagram of overlapping circles. The place where the two circles intersect, while not large, is where we connect.
I don't have enough to deal with, and you're throwing algebra at me.
Technically, it's more like a combination of logic, statistics, and geometry, but sorry about that. Go on.
Well, I'm not sure I have too much more to say, but I do have a question.
You want to know about true love?
Yeah, I guess I do.
Fair enough. What if I were to tell you that your true love is still out there? What if I were to tell you that it's not Anna and it's not Denise?
Ben looked hard at Gino. Was he messing with Ben? Ben couldn't tell, but before Ben could speak, Gino continued.
Or, what if I told you that true love's a bullshit idea? That the whole thing is a myth? What answer feels right to you?
Ben considered the question. I guess I would say that I think it's a myth, but what do I know? Why don't you enlighten me?
I'd be happy to, but I'm not sure you'll love my answer.
Do I ever? Responded Ben.
Okay then. The answer is that true love does exist, but not for everyone. Some people are built in such a way that true love is a possibility for them. They will meet one person, and that person will fill them completely. That person will be the love of their life, but for others, and you've correctly guessed that you are one of the others, they will never experience true love. It's just not in the cards for them. You, Ben Stairs, are not built that way. That doesn't mean you won't fall in love. Heck, you've already done that. But true love, the type of love that feeds endorphins a continual diet of happy pills, it's just not for you. You're gonna have to work a little hard to stay in love.
Well, ain't my life just so much fun, was all Ben could say.
Now don't get all down in the mouth. You have a loving and caring wife. You have a child that you both love. You have a woman out there named Denise that thinks you're hot stuff. From where I sit, that's not too bad.
All true, I guess, replied Ben. But it doesn't necessarily make me feel too much better, and it doesn't make the menu selection any easier.
Oh, I think it might. Look, you now know that you're not built for true love, right? So I ask you, given that neither Anna nor Denise is not, technically speaking, your true love because you don't have one, who do you want to be with?
Ben didn't hesitate. Anna, he said. Denise is fantastic, but take away the fairy tale, take away the concept of true love, and I'll stay with the woman I've been married to for the last 12 years, who loves me and who's the mother of our child. Gino smiled. It was the smile of a parent pleased with the progress his son is making when he does his homework.
Good work, Ben. Free will isn't always easy, but it has its own rewards.
I suppose I should say thank you, said Ben.
No need to thank me. I just asked a question or two. Besides, the real work lies ahead of you.
I know. Ben stood up and stretched his legs. I'm thirsty. Can I get a drink?
Sure,
said Gino.
How about a nice lemonade?
Ben nodded, and Gino went to the fountain and got Ben a glass of lemonade. Ben took a long sip and considered his situation. Here he was, talking to Gino in this strange place, having the most bizarre conversation, and he really didn't know how to categorize it inside his head. He didn't even know how to think about Gino. He understood what Gino had said before about his nature and the universe, but Ben had been brought up to believe in a personal God. Not quite an old man with a flowing white beard, but something more intimate than the universe and the forces of nature. Gino, he said at last, or should I say God, when I leave here, am I supposed to pray to you? Gino walked around the counter and sat down in the seat next to Ben.
Remember, Ben, you won't remember any of this when you leave here. Besides, you didn't pray all that much before coming here, so I doubt you'll do so in the future.
Don't you know for sure? Don't you know the future?
In a sense, I know the future. I can calculate to about the millionth decimal point what you will do based on your makeup, who you have relationships with, your total knowledge base, and your history. Still, there is that pesky free will thing that throws an element of uncertainty into things. Plus, some quantum uncertainty is built into the whole thing to keep it interesting. Hence, there is a tiny margin for error in predicting the future. In either case, I try not to think about the future. I tend to let things happen. I don't really dabble in human affairs much.
Wait a second there, didn't you, write the Bible, or at least inspire it?
The Bible? Heck no. First of all, I hate to write. And besides, I've had a horrible case of writer's block for the last couple of million years. I just look at a blank page and I get all anxious. I haven't written much more than a few thousand fortune cookies during all recorded history.
What? You're telling me you had nothing to do with the Bible or any religious text?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. As I said, I am the guiding force in the universe, so to the extent that I caused the whole thing to begin with, I guess I can take some ownership, but really, the whole religion thing is your invention, not mine. Like I said, I dabbled in some fortune cookies just for kicks a few years back, but then the big corporations got into it, and I felt like my stuff just didn't fit in. I had some really nifty sayings in those cookies back in the day, but alas, that ended.
Ben just sat there, with his mouth wide open. He had incorrectly assumed that even though Gino did not seem to fit into the traditional religious construct he grew up with, he was still the same God as in the Bible. So, there is no personal God, like in the Bible? It wasn't a question. It was a dawning realization on Ben's part. There is no one to really pray to. There is no one to protect us. There's no one pulling the strings and guiding humanity. It seems rather bleak.
It is the same universe it has always been. How you perceive it now might be different, but it is still the same place, with the same amount of beauty, love, injustice, and pain as before. If you were expecting a definitive happy ending for all humanity, well, I guess then you might be a bit disappointed. If you were expecting a prize at the end, I am sorry to disappoint you. No prize at the end. The prize, my friend, is at the beginning.
If I get your drift, then there is no heaven, no personal God, and no afterlife. This'll take some getting used to.
Hey, I'm standing right in front of you. That's not personal enough.
Sorry, I meant no offense, but you're just a manifestation. It's hard to form a deep, long-lasting relationship with the whole darn universe. You're not a real thing. Again, no offense.
I am real, but I see the point you're struggling with. While I am not exactly what you grew up believing in, I am real. I am 100% real, and I am at this moment both man and spirit equally.
How do you do that?
I don't do anything. It is just my nature. Our time here in the diner is coming to an end, but I'll try to explain this via an analogy. There's something in physics called the double slit experiment. Let me give you the basics of how it works. Think of a bunch of marbles being shot by a gun at a wall. But there's a metal sheet with a slit in the middle between the gun and the wall. Then, picture the marbles hitting a wall a few feet further on. The marbles go through the slit, which result in a line of marbles to the back wall. Same result happens if you have two slits. You would just get two lines on the back wall. You with me so far?
First math, now physics. I'm thrilled, he grumbled.
Bear with me for just a minute or two more. Now, picture the same experiment with water. If you push a wave of water through a single slit, the wave passes through the slit and radiates out to the back wall to form a single mark. But if you conduct the experiment with two slits, you'll get an interference pattern on the back wall as waves passing through the slits interact with each other.
Ben looked confused. Gino frowned and then snapped his fingers. Suddenly, the diner's floor was awash in water, and the experiment materialized before Ben's eyes. Now he saw the interference pattern. Gino then snapped his fingers again and the water disappeared.
Now, if we repeat this same experiment with electrons, which can be said to be tiny bits of matter like the marbles, we see something different. At first, we see the same pattern with the marbles if we shoot electrons through a metal sheet with a single slit. Now, one might suppose that if you shot electrons through a metal sheet with two slits, you would see two bands of electrons on the back wall. But you don't. With two slits, you get an interference pattern. In essence, the electrons act simultaneously as a particle and a wave. The whole thing is way more complicated than this simple description. Still, the fundamental fact remains that this single little electron is 100% particle and 100% wave simultaneously.
Okay, so your point is?
If a tiny little electron can possess the potential to be both particle and wave at the same time, why is it so hard to conceive of me as both the universe and a personal being at the same time?
Ben smiled, the point becoming evident to him in that instant. So, right now, while you're standing here in front of me, you are both a physical being and the universe at the same time.
Bingo,
Gino said, pointing a finger at Ben's nose.
You nailed it.
I know you said our time is running out, and I know you said I won't remember much from our encounter here except the decisions I've made. But can I take that last insight with me? I've had a major aha moment here. I don't want to lose that. Gino gave Ben a little wink.
Tell you what I'll do. I'll send you a little something after you leave here that should get you that insight you want.
Thanks.
Just doing my job, Gino said with a smile. Nice of you to drop in and visit for a while.
With that, Gino extended his hand to Ben and they shook. This has been the craziest day of my life, but I'm glad you decided to invite me in.
I'm glad you stopped in as well. Business was kind of slow tonight. I enjoyed the conversation. Good luck, Ben. Remember, you decide what you want. At best, my job is to simply illuminate the choices.
Ben turned to go and looked outside the windows of the diner.
Look, the fog is gone.
Gino walked up next to Ben and tapped his finger to Ben's head.
Yep, sure seems to be the case.
He walked over to the door and opened it for Ben. Ben nodded to God on the way out, knowing he would likely never see him again. Well, he mused, he was sure about that to about 1,000,000 decimal points. Ben was in the car. He was driving home. He noticed the fog had seemed to evaporate right before his eyes. 1 minute it was there, and the next it was gone. Poof. Just gone. He was going to be late. Anna would not be thrilled, but Ben would tell her that he loved her, and he would make sure it never happened again. Period. For some reason, he felt more certain of that than he had in a long time. He loved Anna and their partnership together. They had it pretty good when he got right down to it. Ben turned on the radio. For no reason in particular, he turned on NPR and caught the host as they were about to begin a program called Wow in the World. The host announced that they would examine what scientists called the double slit experiment and what that means in the real world this evening. Ben sat for a second, trying to determine whether he was in the mood for a talk radio program or some music. He decided to leave the radio on NPR. It might be nice to hear some conversation. He hadn't listened to another voice besides his own for hours. Ben looked up at the sky as he drove. It was turning into a gorgeous evening. With the fog gone, the evening sky looked beautiful as it fell toward the horizon. Ben suddenly wished he had his camera, the good old Nikon. That sky would make a beautiful picture.